I was debating whether or not to use this poster. So, to avoid any trouble with anybody, I'll just use this poster. 2003 was definitely the era of the Ruthless Aggression era where things were just picking up in the sense of like you already knew who your top stars were for the Ruthless Aggression era. The problem was nobody outside of Triple H and Brock Lesnar were really ever gonna be tumbled because Raw, while good, the evolution stuff just was too much. Where Triple H just had to be this unstoppable force, where he's constantly just beating everybody, and then SmackDown. The great thing about it was the back and forth with Brock and Kurt. And then everything else was take it or leave it. There was still the SmackDown 6, even though Edge was out. Chavo Guerrero was irrelevant, so you really only had Ray in the cruiserweight, and then Benoit and Eddie were mid carders. So, um, and then Kurt Angle, like I said, he stayed on top with Brock. Um, and then Evolution just constantly was burying everybody left and right. The most interesting part about 2003 was Kane, believe it or not, when he got unmasked and had this cool feud with Shane, Rob Van Dam, and eventually working his way up to the Undertaker. So Kane, in a way, was the most interesting part of this entire year, if I'm being honest. We opened the night with La Resistance beating the Dudley Boys, and it's really weird to say this, but like the La Resistance team was whatever, they were whatever type of heels, but the Dudley Boys getting pushed like this, like I get it, you want to build new stars, but it's the Dudleys, man. It's the freaking Dudleys. Undertaker defeated A Train. Again, back to like Undertaker not knowing what to do with him, so they just put him with A Train. This was a decent match, I guess. Out of all the American Badass matches, this is probably the best one for Undertaker at SummerSlam during his American Badass persona. But this is, in fact, the last time we get to see the American Badass at SummerSlam as he eventually gets buried at Survivor Series and we get the Dead Man pretty soon. So there's something to get excited about. Shane McMahon defeated Eric Bischoff. This was a weird story where like Shane and Eric Bischoff are arguing back and forth. Stone Cold gets involved. Jonathan Coachman gets involved. It was just a weird story because like this was slowly building up to Shane McMahon and Kane, but at the same time we were doing Shane and Eric Bischoff. I get the story. I mean, it sounds cool to do a McMahon versus a Bischoff, but out of the, I'm gonna be honest. Even though Shane is the best McMahon as a wrestler, I think Vince and Stephanie have better chemistry with Eric Bischoff, if I'm making any sense. Eric Bischoff was never a great wrestler, but he was a good person to beat the crap out of him. That was what made it entertaining. Honestly, this was heavily built with Stone Cold, but we already got Stone Cold versus Bischoff at No Way Out 2003, which was a really underrated match. Even though it wasn't like a technical masterpiece, it was the most entertaining thing I have ever seen, or one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen. Let's chill. But yeah, this was very entertaining, and I don't know, this was alright, but for the most part, it was just Shane getting the upper hand. It went a little too long. I'll say that. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Rhino, and Tajiri had a great fatal four. Well, not a great, but a pretty good one. So far, the best match so far up to this point. There was a side of me that kind of just wish we got Eddie and Benoit one on one yet again, but Tajiri and Rhino were random added people to the match. If anything, I know Big Show becomes the U.S. champion later on, so they could have just done Big Show, Eddie, and Benoit. But I believe this is around the time where he was part of the Vengeance triple threat that he eventually got hurt in, or kayfabe got hurt. I don't remember what the real story was, but anyways, this was fine. But if Eddie was gonna retain, it makes sense for him to win in a fatal four where he can lie, cheat, and steal his way to the victory. So can't really fault it for that. The match of the night, Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar. I do like the story of them being best friends and then eventually turning on each other, Brock turning into a heel. I think a heel Brock is way much better than a babyface Brock around this point because, I don't know, Brock just wasn't pulling it as the face of the WWE. I think they were slowly trying to find the next face for the WWE, and Brock was just naturally better off as the bad guy. Vince's involvement does work, and it is kind of weird seeing him as the face, but Kurt made Brock Lesnar tap out, which is rare to see. And this wasn't a period where people complain about tapping out. Kurt Angle is an Olympic gold medalist. He won an Olympic medal with a broken freaking neck, so it makes sense for him to make Brock tap out. This is the weakest out of the Brock Angle trilogy with Mania, SummerSlam, and the Iron Man match. This is the weakest match, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it, and luckily no botched air shooting star press. Kane versus Rob Van Dam. This was highly entertaining. It wasn't the greatest match in the world, but it was very entertaining. Two ex tag team partners going at it after Kane's unmasking. He was forced to be unmasked at MSG. He had that new look, new style, and I really like this version of Kane. This was the Kane that I grew up with. I know a lot of people hated how ridiculous he looked without the um, mask, and then his like scars was kind of ridiculous, but it worked for me. Rob Van Dam was a good worker, like I said, but this was very personal as far as wrestling goes, so this was really cool. Your main event was the second ever Elimination Chamber match featuring Triple H, Goldberg, Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Chris Jericho, and Randy Orton. And right from the get go, I was like, this has to be Goldberg squashes everybody and then gets to Triple H, and then it's just them two. That is the only way to redeem this type of match. We do kind of get that, only for Shawn to eliminate Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash made no sense in this. I would have replaced him with Scott Steiner or Test or Christian. Somebody else. Even if they were a jobber. Because Kevin Nash was just, he sucked, man. I'm sorry. Kevin Nash, around this period, he was just awful. He will admit that. He better admit it. Um, but this match is famous for a lot of things. Starting with Goldberg, in particular, with his botched entrance, which gets cut in the Netflix edition of this. He spears Chris Jericho through one of the pots, which is an iconic shot, to say the least. But it was really cool to see Goldberg eliminate people left and right, and then eventually getting to Triple H. But they dropped the ball by having Triple H sneak out with the victory, with Ric Flair giving Triple H the sledgehammer and knocking out Goldberg, giving Triple H the victory. This was so stupid, and it kind of hurt the match because Triple H was like the fifth entrance. He gets Sweet Chin Music by Shawn Michaels, gets taken out for most of the match. When Goldberg pops in, he takes out Randy, Chris, and Michaels. And then it's Triple H and Goldberg, and it's just some back and forth, and then Triple H takes advantage. The following pay-per-view, Unforgiven, they do Triple H versus Goldberg, with Goldberg putting his career on the line. I didn't like that. I would have just done Goldberg wins. He has a lengthy run up until either Survivor Series or Armageddon. But I did want to see Goldberg have like a decent title run. This is around a time where people didn't hate Goldberg, so this was the time where you could have done something with him. I get it, he was a WCW guy, but come on, he was bringing you money, so I would have taken advantage of this. I personally think that this show gets a C. I thought that really Brock and Kurt was the only truly great thing about it. Kane and Rob Van Dam was entertaining. There was a couple of things that were okay. It was nice to see some stuff, but overall, the decision of not putting over Goldberg and Shane and Bischoff going as long as it did, La Resistance beating the Dudleys, and then Undertaker being completely wasted, just really hurts the show. So I'm just gonna stick with giving this a C. 2004. Let's see how that show goes. I do remember watching the main event, but I don't really remember the rest of the show. So let's see how 2004 looks.